If you're good at solving puzzles in general, but you struggle at actually finding them in your own games, the root cause of the problem is essentially how do you perceive the enemy pieces. And to back this up, I've got four examples that we're going to talk about, emphasizing the most common calculation mistakes. And we're also going to be playing a rapid game. And I'm going to be teaching you the thinking process that pretty much allows you to spot the puzzle moment during the game, even before it happens. So let's dive right into the examples. So on the board, we have one of the most common examples where if told it's a puzzle, people will most of the times find the solution, but if they have it in their own games, they would be always missing it. So obviously, knowing this is a puzzle, you have a tendency for looking to checks and captures. You look for checks, you see a check, then you stumble into the bishop and you're like, ah, three bishop. That's the solution. Obviously, much more difficult to do it in a real game. Is it actually possible to get this in a real game even? Well, the thinking process should be a little bit different considering this is one of the games that you're playing. And the way you want to approach the situation and where the mistake happens is that when black plays bishop b4, because the bishop is developing, pinning the knight, in your brain you're telling yourself that the bishop is placed on an active position, which automatically makes your brain label the bishop as a good piece. So, how the hell can tactics happen to good pieces? Well, wake up, it's real life. Bad things happen to good people all the time, too. But what's actually the important nuance to understand here is that the bishop is undefended. So, it's a mistake to automatically label active pieces as good simply because they are active. You also need to check if they are unprotected. Imagine, let's say you're a police officer and you randomly happen to stop Max Verstappen. You still have to ask for his driver's license before finally labeling him as good. So, classic example here, just make sure to spot undefended piece. Undefended pieces can be vulnerable to tactics. Also, it does not automatically mean that an undefended piece is a lost piece. Because let's say if after queen a4 check, collecting the bishop, my opponent's knight would have been instead on b8, he would have been able to save with knight c6, protecting the bishop. But undefended bishop is a big tell that you should at least double check that you may have a tactic in your real game. How unbelievable, I know. Example number 2, white to play and win. So, pause for a bit, try to analyze the situation, and I'm gonna try to guess what can the breakdown of a beginner could possibly be. And in my opinion, what meets the eye at first while looking at this game is that the enemy bishop is really bad. We tend to immediately perceive that as a bad piece simply because it's restricted. And then, okay, we also notice that the knight is attacking the pawn on c4, which puts the knight in a bit of an authority position. It can make us feel that the knight is a pretty strong piece. While in fact, it's important to double check and realize that despite the threat, the knight is still pretty much undefended. You know, it's like you are arguing with a person just because that person is raising his voice. it doesn't necessarily mean that he's right about the argument. So we notice the knight on b6 is vulnerable and the bishop on b7. So what should we focus on first? Well, it depends on the position, but in general, I think we just prioritize the pieces that are easier to attack. In this case, the b6 knight. How can we try to exploit the knight? Well, bishop a5 comes to mind. Pinning. Now, bishop a5 is a very interesting idea. The problem is that it gives black the opportunity to unpin and then move the knight. So this doesn't do the job. Because we realize rook takes on d1 is the unpinning move, meaning black's saving resource, you want to try to get rid of the counterplay. So start by trading rooks and finally exploit the undefended knight. So that would just be collecting it on the next move with a winning position. Example number 3, my opponent just played the move knight takes e3. So feel free to pause the video and look for the easiest win. Now, while looking at the position, the risk that we are running is to try and desperately get a checkmate, which is a natural thing because we have a knight, we have a queen, the king is pretty lonely. However, the problem with this strategy is that you're losing awareness for pretty much the low-hanging fruit. Also, the knight takes on e3, you may have noticed that the knight is attacking the rook, and maybe that threat also is kind of giving you a little bit of anxiety. So it puts subconsciously the knight in a position with authority. I think a move that naturally comes to mind in this position is knight to e6, trying to go for checkmate. But the problem is that black can simply play queen b6 and all of a sudden it's not so easy how to make progress. In fact, you may have even looked at queen e6 check as to give a check, but then it's also not very clear how to continue. Well, if you made it to this position, you probably missed, in case you missed it, you probably missed that we can capture the knight because you didn't ask yourself whether the knight is undefended or not. So you subconsciously assimilated this knight as a good piece because it's threatening the rook, but didn't realize that it's simply a barking chihuahua on e3. It's nothing scary. Therefore, queen to e6 is the easiest win. No need to play for checkmate. Just pick up the knights, trade queens, go for a simple conversion. So with that being said, we can move on to the last and prettiest example that I've got ready for you. Now, the nice thing about this example is that I'm going to be teaching you how to basically catch a whale with a fishing stick. And I'm not exaggerating. So this is the position that I had in my game, and it was important to start with the move knight takes on d7 because I wanted to lure the enemy queen onto an unprotected position. So with this little hint in mind, feel free to pause the video and look for the winning move. Genuinely one of my favorite tactical ideas of all time because from a seemingly normal position, it just ends the game in 2 moves. And the trick is to exploit the unprotected piece. So we do queen g4, threatening to mate, and also creating a second threat of doing the discovery check and then collecting the enemy queen. This is why we have purposefully placed ourselves on the same diagonal. And black can simply resign because no matter how they stop the checkmate, we're going to be having a free queen. So, yeah. Did you find this any interesting at all? Or am I just spitting a bunch of ooga booga nonsense here? Now, if you found any of this interesting and you're anywhere between 500 to 1000 elo, make sure to watch the next game from start to finish, because you can pretty much apply the same thinking process in most of your games, and you're gonna be gifted a lot of undefended pieces along the way. And now you're also gonna be ready to spot and exploit it. So enjoy the game. Welcome back, everybody. Getting a black game, and we're gonna be going for a c6 d5 no matter what our opponent is doing, and our main goal with the opening is gonna be to try to avoid getting bad pieces. And while we do that, we're gonna be constantly double checking the threat behind our opponent's last move. That is gonna be the biggest catalyst to improve your game. Remember, you're not playing alone, so very important. Okay. Our opponent, keen learner from India, 350, made the move queen to h5. Alright, let's see threat and drawback. So, queen is fighting for d squares, covering the 5th rank. No immediate threat. It's a drawback that the queen could be vulnerable to an attack by the knight. But we're just gonna carry on with our plan. I could use that move. However, you wanna go for the move that you already had in mind, unless there is like a really good reason to deviate. This was arguably a good reason to deviate, but I find just playing d5 simpler. And he took. Okay, he took. We have a choice to take with the queen or with the pawn. Which move do you think is better and why? So, as a rule of thumb, we have recapture in the center of the board. Whenever you can do that, it's gonna be usually best to recapture with a pawn and put a pawn in the center. Taking with the queen would be targeting his queen. However, it does not guarantee that he's gonna trade. So I want to secure a central pawn. This is gonna be the best. And also very important already, how is the queen on h5? And also you need to be aware of how is the bishop on b5. That just checked me. Okay, what do these guys have in common? They are unprotected pieces. So you want to watch out for unprotected pieces like for donuts while playing 500 elo games. Now, opponent is checking me, which is a bit rude of him. But it's interesting because normally the ideal way to block the check would be to use a pawn. We cannot do that. We have a choice between blocking with the knight or blocking with the bishop. I could block with the knight, but the drawback is pinning. I could also block with the bishop, but the drawback of that move is that it's interfering my queen from protecting the pawn. So on a move like bishop d7, suddenly queen takes on d5 will become a thing, so you want to watch out for that. So by elimination, if you didn't instantly make a move, knight e6 is clearly the best option, not losing a pawn. And we're gonna start a very important procedure right now. Not that procedure, but we see enemy pieces in our camp. We need to get rid of them immediately. So moves like knight f6 or a6 are to be considered. Okay, what do we begin with? As a rule of thumb, you target the higher value piece first, which is the queen. Queen worth 9 points, bishop worth 3.25. Yes, I'm saying that because bishops are slightly better than knights. Knights are only worth 3 points. Comparable, but you want to be aware of that. Subtle nuance. So knight f6, developing knight on natural square while gaining a tempo. Also, I forgot to mention, but knight e2, developing move. No threat and drawback behind that. And okay, he plays queen to h5, from h5 to f3. Yeah, you just want to do like a quick scan, see whether the queen has any threats. Okay, what the queen can do. The queen is attacking a bit like an octopus right now, but everything is defended. All right, no threat, no particular drawback behind his last move, so we carry on with our plan. We see bishop in our half of the board. Try to get rid of it immediately. a6 move. Let's see what he wants to do. He could take or he could move back. Remember that I view trading as a negative trade for our opponent. He would be trading a more valuable piece for the knight. He would be trading 3.25 for 3 points only. So we would be having a bishop pair advantage having he taken. Okay, he plays bishop a4. Now, we're playing black pieces. So the plan would be to get castled short as fast as possible. Now we have a choice between two moves to do that. We need to open up path for the bishop. So it's either e5 or e6 so that we can move this guy and then castle. In general, while playing Caro-Kann, I'm more of a fan of putting the pawn to e6, getting this connected 3. Despite the fact that e5 is a good move, yeah, putting another pawn in the center. Simply because I like more to have a solid structure. But the problem with going e6 right away is that a pawn would be restricting a really valuable bishop. So you don't want to have a piece that's valued 3 points to be completely restricted, just eyeballing that pawn. So before going e6, then we must develop the bishop. g4 or f5. f5 is not available because the queen is watching it, so g4 is the square. Even better, it comes with a tempo. So bishop g4 with the idea to close the bishop, to close the door behind the bishop, then do e6. You do not want to be closing the bishop. And then this move. Okay, queen e3. Threat and drawback. So there's a bit of a long distance duel, nothing going on there. Queen is watching this diag, watching that diag as well. Okay, no particular threat with our opponent move. Then we just carry on with our plan. So we want to do e6, bishop e7, castle. We castle and then we wait for undefended pieces or we look for pawn break. Also, I just want you to quickly scan the position and tell me if you notice something interesting. In the context where I just mentioned that we want undefended pieces, because those are going to be vulnerable to tactics. So if you pay attention, opponent already has an undefended bishop on a4, which is a clue. You want to be aware of such pieces. Not that it necessarily there will be a winning attack immediately, but in the long run, juicy opportunities could open up. So you want to have a flexible mind, pretty much like an elastic, and constantly look around for, be aware of such things and look for potential changes in the position with every move. Okay. Knight f4. Threat and drawback. Knight to f4. So the knight is suddenly attacking these pawns that are protected. And it's no longer controlling these squares, which doesn't really seem to matter much because none of our pieces are controlling them. Okay. Then I think we can just continue with our plan of getting castled short. I recommend normally just putting the bishop on e7. Going to d6 is possible, but in general, as a low elo player, you will have to deal with these bishop pins a lot. So I like to have bishop on e7 just because it gives these knights safety in case of an eventual pin. Okay, it's not really the case here because the bishop doesn't have a way to teleport over. But in general, I just put bishop on e7 and my opponent castled. So frat and drawback, I just castled. No frat and drawback. It's a good move. So we should be doing the same. Get castled. Well, we have awareness for undefended bishop on a4. We know that's there. And okay, he played h3. So h3, frat and drawback. He's attacking the bishop. Okay, where can we move the bishop? So those squares clearly taken, not an option. Bishop back. Taking is not an option. And bishop back. So those are gonna be possible moves. Which one do you think we should go for? Now, notice that bishop h5, it's covered by the knight, but it would allow his knight to capture our bishop, which would be a negative trade for us. Remember that the bishops are slightly more valuable pieces than the knights. So by elimination, we put the bishop on f5. Put the bishop on f5 and okay, just waiting to see what happens. Chess is a lot like ping pong, I would say, in that aspect. Especially at the beginning, what you're trying to do is just get the ball over the net by playing simple logical moves. So get the ball over the net. You don't want to go for some like crazy topspin Chinese serves or anaconda or whatever names there are in ping pong. I'm pretty good at ping pong, but I'm not a professionally trained ping pong guy, so I don't know to tell you the names. Okay, queen f3. Queen f3, frat and drawback. So the queen is now looking at these squares. There doesn't really seem to be a potential frat with that. The drawback is he's just moving the queen a lot of times. More times than he's supposed to. And as a consequence, he's got some sleepy pieces in the corner. They're starting to collect dust. Okay, what should we do next? So this is interesting part. We have completed development. We castled. However, there is one last step, I would say, which is to move the queen and connect rooks. That's how you finish opening. So we look for a good queen square. Remember, the goal is to connect rooks. So it cannot be a queen move on these squares. Those are out of the question. So we have a choice between these ones. Now, while finding the best square for the queen, you want to go for obviously the best potential. And the best potential, it comes down to how many squares is it fighting for. A good rule of thumb is look for open files. Open files, okay, let's say semi-open files. On open files, if you put it, which is completely open, no pawns on it, enemy rook could target your queen. You want to be a bit careful. But in this case, semi-open file, it's a file where we don't have a black pawn. So we don't have black pawns on this side. We cannot put the queen on c8 because we want to connect rooks. Meaning, by elimination, this should be very good square. Queen on open file. Rooks are connected. The kids are eating. Everybody is happy. Okay, still, this bishop is undefended. We're aware of that. Keep that in the back of your mind. And still, we're waiting for our opponent to loosen up a bit. Yeah, it's... imagine we're going fishing right now. It can be sometimes a boring day. Yeah, not catch anything. Or sometimes There is just too much fish that you you need to come up with a net or something. It's not enough to just have a fishing stick with you. We're waiting. Okay, d3. Threat and drawback. d3, fighting for these squares, opening up bishop's path. No threat. No particular drawback either. In fact, it's sort of a good structure because my bishop is staring into a crystal. So a pawn that's protected by a pawn, meaning my bishop cannot do any damage on that diagonal, which it doesn't make it a bad bishop. It just makes it less effective. Okay, what next? We have connected rooks. Now, last step would be to put a rook onto the open file as well. So we have queen. Let's put a rook. Which rook do you choose? Normally, while going for the rook move, you want to visualize where both rooks are going. So I know I need a rook on open file, right? I need a rook on c8 square, but which one? So before you play rook c8 or the other one, you need to find a plan for the other guy as well. So if I play rook c8, I do it in mind that, okay, this rook is coming to d8. That's how you don't mess up your rook placement. So yeah, just because I need open file and I would like to have some pressure in the center as well, let's say, I can use it this way. I think both are fine. But just in general, this is how you think about, and you always get the rook placement right. Look for open files and think about both in advance. And okay. g4. Threat. Our bishop is under attack. Drawback. Pushing pawns in front of your king can be pretty risky. Now, by elimination, we cannot take. Pawn is defended. We cannot go e4. Pawn is covering that. We cannot take either. So pretty much the only move is bishop g6. And important to retreat. It's not a tragedy to retreat. It's very much okay. Let's normalize retreating in chess, please. Because in a lot of games, I see beginners all the time afraid to retreat. And whenever a threat like this is happening, their reflex is, oh, I need to go ahead and counterattack. I'm going to play p5 or knight e4 or knight e5. Do anything but retreat because they just take it as a very negative thing. Yeah, you retreat, it's like you lost already. No, you cannot play chess like a bull just to go forward. You will have to retreat sometimes. It is not a tragedy. Yeah, you just don't lose your piece. It's a good thing. So it's very okay to retreat. Just keep it simple. And we are waiting for our opponent to loosen up and then punish. Okay, g5. Targeting the knight. Drawback with that move is that notice while moving the pawn, those squares become a bit vulnerable in the long run. So, okay, I have to move the knight. Where do I move it? On the rim, normally it's bad, plus it's also losing a piece in this case. White can take twice. Then I cannot put it in the center because of the pawn. So we have to choose between knight d7 and knight e8. Now, by elimination, knight e8 is on the back rank and breaking connection between the rooks. So, because we want to keep rooks connected, knight d7 is going to be the move. Now, please notice that this pawn is undefended and the bishop is undefended. So we already have 2 clues. Slowly we will gather a case. Yeah, slowly. It takes time, but it will happen. Okay, rook e1. Threat and drawback. The rook is, okay, attacking a protected pawn, so no threat. The drawback, however, more clues are starting to gather. Yeah, unprotected rook, unprotected pawn. unprotected bishop. Already, let's say, can you find a way to exploit these two unprotected pieces? Pause the video and think about it. It all starts with looking for unprotected pieces. If you do this, I'm telling you, you just collect donuts. This is how you win pretty much the majority of games from 500 elo to 1000. So you see those pieces, can use the queen, simple double attack, just pretty much targeting 2 donuts at once. Yeah, you just catch the donuts with a single finger. So let's see, queen a5. I could have also captured this free pawn, of course. It was there, it was free. But it's very important. I told you in the beginning, you see how easily the thing opens up. You just play solid chess, get your development, retreat when attacked, watch out for his threats, and these things start appearing on the chessboard, these undefended pieces. Sorry for interrupting, just one quick mention that I forgot to make during the game. I guess I was getting a little bit too caught up in the donut thing, but instead of b3, which happened and we will take a look on, my opponent could have tried to stop this attack by going knight to c3. And you can try to pause the video and find the actual winning move. But the point is to exploit the pinned knight by pushing d4. And the knight is unable to leave because the rook would be free. So d4 would have also won a piece. We're a winning game. Now, back into the video. So my opponent played b3. Threat and drawback. No threat. But he is defending the bishop. Problem, however, opponent doesn't have awareness for the undefended rook. So, gonna collect the undefended rook and yeah, it's gonna be Black Friday with donuts because we also have another undefended bishop suddenly. So, undefended bishop, undefended pawn. King g2. Yeah, it was a check. Now we have simple move. Suddenly my opponent's position collapsed. And notice how nicely everything happened. Literally all of our pieces are protected by each other. We're never really in danger zone. And this is pretty much all you need to do. But you don't need to go for any crazy attacks. Yeah, like in ping pong. You don't want to, hit like a top spin from under the table and then yeah, of course, your opponent will be surprised by the curve of the ball. No, just want to ball over the net. Okay, if it's like very high, it's very high in the sky, you can hit it a bit harder. Yeah, it's you're gonna get it most of the times. Yeah, if it's especially like close to the net, very hard. I mean, just like this queen a5 move, double attack that we played. So, okay, b4. Threat and drawback. Now, drawback of b4 is that it's putting the pawn free and it's making undefended bishop. So again, we have a bit of a case while looking for these undefended pieces. Okay, we also have, there is another element in the position about a1 rook. While looking for these undefended pieces, you want to prioritize the higher value piece. Yeah, it's going to be the biggest fish that we can catch. So instead of trying to take these pawns or that bishop, I'm going to go for the biggest fish. Queen b2. I'm targeting the undefended piece. So, yeah, it's pretty nice payday. What can I say? And opponent, I have to say, he played quite decent. So 300 elo player, he made okay, he has broken many opening principles like developing the queen early, but it took a while until he loosened up. But that's why you need to have the patience. They will always loosen up. This is why they are below 1000 elo. So just need patience. Okay, queen d1. Threat and drawback. So no particular threat. Drawback. The knight is undefended. So we have another clue. Now the knight could be vulnerable. I'm just gonna take, of course, the fat payday, collect the rook, and the next step will be to try to exchange pieces pretty much. We have a ton of material, but whenever you have at least one extra pawn, the game strategy changes a little bit. You want to look at the chess game, at potentially two chess games inside one. It's one chess game where material is even, and it's one chess game when you're ahead in material. And I'll explain in a second what's the matter with that. Okay, just collect undefended stuff, collect pawn, target knight. And the main reason why I'm bringing that up is as soon as you have one extra pawn, you're dominating the board and you have much more avenues to expand because every trade it's gonna be playing in your favor. So, okay, we look for trading pieces. How do we do that? Not very clear. I see my queen is in the corner. Important after you catch some big fish like that in opponent's camp, you wanna pretty much run immediately, okay? Just like a cat that's stealing some steak from barbecue. You know how cat is always waiting and stealing? You don't see the cat starting to eat the barbecue in front of the owner. The cat knows the owner will get pretty pissed. So you catch the barbecue, you run away with it, then you eat in your camp. Okay, that's all you have to do. It's that simple. Okay, d4. Threat and drawback. Knight is attacked. Let's move knight. Where do we move it? Let's move it in his camp. I'll have to actually just speed up a little bit with all this explanation and my opponent playing rather quickly. We are living off the increment. Remember that I'm gaining 10 seconds each move. Okay, threat, knight is protected. Just, okay, gonna take a pawn. Looking for simplifications. Also, in general, I think my opponent is playing a bit too quick. So it's generally very good to use your time while you're playing these games as a beginner to just really take into account the relationships between the pieces, see who attacks who, look for the threat of his move, and that type of thing. He's playing a bit too quick, therefore making mistakes. It's not that he is not capable of playing better, he just doesn't have really discipline for now. Queen e1. Okay, I'm gonna go for the trade, but the nice thing is that you cannot recapture because of the pin. Now, threat is to take the knight because he unpinned, so I'm gonna go back with the knight. Let's go back to e4 and you want to look for a queen trade. So something like queen takes on f2 just to clean up the board at this point. When you're up so much material, it comes back to the strategy that I mentioned earlier. All the trades are gonna be in your favor. So you have extra pawn, spam your opponent with queen trades. Because whenever you have extra material, you want to treat the game as, okay, let's trade all the pieces. Will be kings only left on the board, but I'll have more pawns than him. And with kings left on the board only, it's going to be easy to promote into a queen and then mate him. Now, okay, I can play for mate, of course, but very important, you want to get used to queen trade and endgame, yeah? Endgame and then trades. So I'm trading his last piece with a fork. And I'm not doing this on purpose to like make the video longer or anything. This is how I would treat it all the time. Just look for trades. I have 1,000 extra material points. This is how you simplify it. You want to let him with king alone. Then it's impossible to mess it up. Okay, b5. Targeting this. Take. Now... okay, we see king and bishop. Bishop is unprotected. So we try to exploit yet again, same concept, unprotected piece, go for the fork. And then we're gonna get a queen. And okay, if you have so much extra material, it just comes down to setting up a ladder checkmate, or the moan loner, how some people like to call it. I think I like it with moan loner better myself. So you'll just have to wait a bit to see. We're gonna get a queen. We're gonna eliminate the last pawn and then promote. And I'm gonna teach you how to catch this king in a box and slowly but surely make the box smaller and smaller until it's checkmate. So it's all pretty much muscle memory. You will learn these techniques. It's not really much you have to come up with over the board. So okay, let's make room for the pawn. Let's move the knight away. I'm just gonna move the knight here to not interfere the rook. It's on the edge, but it doesn't really matter. My only goal is to get the queen. Yeah, he cannot get closer because my rook is covering. The c file, yeah, it's cutting him away. And then I'll teach you how to do this this box, how to moan the loan. So, okay, we see his king, and okay, we look at the position. The king is potentially trying to escape via this rank, so we just try to make a box. We try to cut the rank. We do it with a rook or with a queen. And now you can see he's sort of trapped in this box. And then the technique is to bring the queen close to the rook. Notice that the box is shortening. Yeah, I'm playing queen b3 check. And while you're doing it, try to do, when you start checking, try to do it with checks. No, I mean, don't make moves like, be very careful at least when you play moves like queen c2 or stuff like that. Because it's not with a tempo, and if he's king alone, you're running the risk of stalemate. So set up the box and then everything with check. So there is never stalemate. Okay, notice that the box is shortening. Playing rook c2, the box is getting even shorter. And this is the technique that you can pretty much do on autopilot all the time with extra material. You trade his stuff, you get him into this lone moaner, you just farm free rating. So yeah, quite an interesting game overall. We got to see some typical opening errors from my opponent, and I'm glad you saw the process of okay, you just play solid, good moves from the opening, and then you just wait for him to loosen up. Because they will, sooner or later. Okay, maybe some guys loosen up on move 15, maybe on 25. As long as you just keep patient, you don't have to throw in random jabs at your opponent, random frats, stuff like that. You get a solid structure, wait for undefended pieces. So you saw how it started happening. G4, G5, so 2 loose moves in a row, rook e1. This one, it was a bit subtle. It was a bit random for him that rook e1 is a losing move, but the clues are starting to add up. Yeah, if you have awareness for the clues, they really add up. So you see these pieces, then queen a5 is just hitting in the right spot. So the rest is pretty simple. Once you are ahead material, you just start playing this exchanging game, and the win is automatic. So yeah, hope you guys at least feel like you learned something from this game. Not that you necessarily learned something, at least that you feel like it. And thank you for watching. By the way, I'm thinking to make this kind of videos a separate series. How to climb using this simplified thinking process from 500 ELO all the way to 1000, since in general, all the speedruns that I did in the past start usually at 1000 ELO. And I know most of you out there that probably are still watching because you're just trying to be nice. No, you're actually nice, and I appreciate you. I know you guys are more advanced, so I'm also gonna be restarting a speedrun at 1000 ELO while simultaneously making these more beginner-friendly tutorials. So let me know in the comments if you want me to continue this 500 Elo rating climb. And hope you guys, again, learned something, and I'll see you around the channel. Have a good one.